How many of the 10 Commandments can you name right now? Hello and welcome to Bible Bites. Over the next little while, we're going to be looking at the 10 Commandments. And I wonder how many of them you could actually name. Recently, I was challenged as to how many I could name and whether I could name all 10, as opposed to could I name all 10 ingredients in a Big Mac. Sadly, I could do the Big Mac. I couldn't do all 10 commandments. I got some of them wrong. What about you? Today we're going to be looking at the first commandment. And I wonder if you actually even know what the first commandment is. Let's go to Exodus 20 and have a look at that now. You shall have no other gods before me. That is to say, God saying, I am the only God, and you need to worship me alone. You don't just get a smorgasbord of gods and pick and choose which gods you want. It's me. I am the one true God, and you need to worship me as God. Now, you could argue, do we really need this commandment? Like, is this such an important thing? And, we could get away with, do not murder, do not lie, do not steal. Those ones seem to work. But why this one? Why this one as the first one? Well, the reason is because every ethical framework has a foundation. It has something that decides what's right and what's wrong, and who decides what's right and what's wrong. And that ethical framework will determine what you decide in your life as what's right and wrong and what's important and all of those things. Now, we all have some sort of framework. The question is, does it work? Some people will say, actually, you know what it should be? It should be happiness. Happiness should be the key thing. And whatever makes you happy, that's what you should do as right or wrong. Or whatever makes the most of us happy should be the thing that decides what's right and wrong. But here's the problem with happiness. What makes me happy is different to what makes you happy. And it's the same with cultures. Here's what John Dixon says in his book on the 10 Commandments. Even if we accepted happiness in the broad sense as the great good, different cultures through history would have located sources of happiness in quite different realities. Philosophy for ancient Greece, victory for ancient Rome, comfort or pleasure in the modern West, racial ascendancy in Nazi Germany, and so on. In other words, the scientific measures of happiness enhancement in Plato's Athens would not be the same as those in 21st century Sydney. See, his point is, who decides what's happy? It's going to be different for different people. We need some sort of objective framework if we're going to work together as a society. And the 10 Commandments is saying that objective framework, that objective foundation is God himself. Because God has made the world, God is God, and he knows, and he is wise, and he can tell us what is really good for us. Now, I realize some people will look at this and go, what does that say about God's character? I mean, here he is, he's this big God in the sky telling us what to do. Doesn't sound like a great God, but actually it is. See, come with me to a couple of verses beforehand, and Moses actually reminds us of the God who is speaking to us of these 10 Commandments. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. God is reminding them that as they hear the 10 Commandments for the first time, these are the Israelites at Mount Sinai, he's saying, you didn't come here because you obeyed the 10 Commandments. You didn't get here because I gave you a test of here are 10 rules, and whoever obeys the 10 rules, you get to come out of slavery. Everybody else, you get to stay there. That's not how he operated. He said, no, you're my people. I'm going to bring you out of slavery, and now that you're free, now that you're my people, now I want to give you some instructions that are good for you, that are going to help you live as my people. And so he gives them the 10 Commandments. And it's the same for us in the New Testament. I mean, God has rescued us from sin. He has given us his Son as a sacrifice so that we might go free. And then he gives us instructions as to how we can live. And that instruction is, God is God, and we should treat him as God. But of course, the commandment warns us there are going to be many gods. The one God we should worship is the God of the Bible. So that begs the question, what is your true God? What is the thing or the person or the idea that is your foundation of ethical framework, your idea of how you decide what is right or wrong? Because only the God of the Bible is able to be wise enough to tell us what is right and wrong. And more than that, He is the God who truly satisfies us in worshipping Him. Is the God that you're worshipping really satisfying you? If not, you might need to come back to this commandment. In fact, you might need to come back to this commandment as you look at some of the other things that are happening in your life and you realize, actually, I'm not really treating God as God. I need to stop and do that before I get to any of the other commandments and before I do anything else. So let me ask you, what is your true God? Is it God?